Warning: the following program is solely intended for a mature audience. Any of the idiotic opinions and views expressed on this show are solely opinions of Dark Fringe Radio and not of its advertisers, which is completely pointless because this poorly produced, dumbass podcast has no advertisers.
I'm sorry, son. But we do have an advertiser now, AmpSmart. So, yeah. Sorry. Go back to your thing.
Furthermore, any rebroadcast or redistribution of Dark Fringe Radio podcast without the permission is strictly prohibited. If you do, we will find you. Then we will send 3 black-eyed children to your home or office to collect your soul. Thank you. Enjoy the show.
Coming to you live from the Mistopheles Studios, it's Dark Fringe Radio.
Hey, and welcome to Dark Fringe Radio. I am your host, Will Martinez, and thanks for joining us on Dark Fringe Radio, your number one podcast for the strange, the unusual, anything to do with any of that kind of stuff. I see if you can find it here. And of course, my co-host to do this all with me, as always, Jay Galosi. Jay, what's going on, brother?
What is going on, Dark Fringers?
What is going on, man? It's awesome tonight, man. Good energy. And we got a great podcast for all of you guys tonight. We're going to be talking about some different types of conspiracy theories that me and Jay have kind of dug up and kind of agree with. So we're just going to kind of dig into the conspiracy theory thing and do all that kind of stuff. But thanks for joining us in Dark Fringe Radio. And we hope you guys enjoy this episode of the podcast. I wanted to remind everybody how to find our stuff on social media. You can find us on Dark Fringe Radio anywhere on Facebook, Twitter, and also Instagram. Just look up Dark Fringe Radio, like I said, and you can find all of our postings, everything that we post, anything that we have to do with the podcast, episodes, anything that's upcoming, guests, whatever. It's on there. You can follow us. Make sure you do that. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and all that stuff, and share. So, again, how to listen to the podcast, pretty much everywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find our podcast. We are available on iTunes, Stitcher, where else, Jay? Spotify? Where else, Jay? I mean, Stitcher, Google Play.
Spotify, Google Play.
Yep, we're all over the place. So just make sure
everywhere.
Just find us at Dark Fringe Radio. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment and give us a 5-star rating. That helps us out tremendously, please. We can't beg you enough to do that for us. That's, your price to pay us back for a free podcast. So we do appreciate when you guys do that. That's it. How to listen to the podcast, where to listen to all our stuff and catch all our latest news and info about the podcast. Follow us on all those 3 fronts as far as the social media is concerned. How to send us information, Jay? Anyone that can send us any kind of information they want, if they have a mailbag question, any kind of suggestions for a show, a guest, somebody who is interested in maybe coming on the podcast, you can send that directly to us at thedarkfringe@gmail.com. Again, that's thedarkfringe@gmail.com. So that comes right to me directly. I respond, and I get you an answer pretty quickly. So that's pretty much it. And
I don't respond.
No, not Jay. But listen, we do respond, and we get back to people. And if you have anything like that, please send it to us there. We do respond quickly. So that's it for the intro, Jay. You want to get into our next segment? You ready for that?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
I'm very cautious about emailing.
Oh, yeah, I'm ready. So let's get into the mailbag, of course, this week on Dark Fringe Radio. We have a couple different, let's see here, things that got sent in, and I have accumulated together. Oh, looks like we got a recurring one here, Jay. Looks like from David Gomez from Scottsdale, Arizona. He's giving us another Julian Assange update. And
there's some good ones. I've been reading up on this one.
Yeah, and it looks like it says, hey guys, David from Scottsdale, Arizona. Hey guys, wanted to give you a Julian Assange update. There's been more developments this past week. This week, the Department of Justice has now handed down a charge of espionage to Mr. Assange. So some are saying it's a declaration of war to journalism, and how this case is going to change the face of media, and how it's going to be in the future. And others say that it's an infringement of the First Amendment rights. So you have people on both ends of the spectrum there, or maybe even agreeing on both sides there. But yeah, what say you there, Jay?
It's crazy how fast the government has gotten involved and thrown out such heavy things as espionage.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy one.
Pretty big.
Well, listen,
He's in a lot of trouble.
He's in a lot of trouble, and it's going to be very curious to see how this administration is going to take care of him, unless they just like pretty much bury him and leave it for the next one. So for the next one to make a decision on whoever whatever happens. That's maybe what happens at the end, but nonetheless, I mean, yeah, that's some pretty serious charges, Jay. It looks like he is not going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, again, I don't know. Is the Deadpool? Is he surfacing at the top of the Deadpool pretty much at this point?
But if he dies, we would have to know. I have a feeling that we're about to hear a lot less about him.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right. So, well, listen, David, thanks for sending us that Julian Assange update. We do appreciate you giving us the weekly updates, and please continue to do so. We appreciate it. So, next one comes from a Charles Pritchard from Trent, New Jersey, and subject on this one is Ghost Hunt. So, all right. Charles writes, hello, Will and Jay. It's Charles here from Trenton. I had an idea for one of your future episodes for the podcast. And I think you and Jay should do a live episode, or at least record on location, of you both investigating a haunted location. I'd like to see how tough you both are. Listen to this here. Oh, it's getting better.
Why do people want to get me like possessed and shit? Like, what is that all about?
Well, listen to the next line here. I'd like to see how tough you both are going into a very active house or a building with no lights on. Anyways, thought that might be a great idea for an episode. Thanks, you guys, from Charles Pritchard from Trent, New Jersey. So, yeah, Jay, Charles thinks we should do an episode where we go into a haunted location and record it all and put it all together for us listeners to listen to.
Yeah, I'll mark it down on my calendar.
Well, funny enough, Charles, me and Jay actually have talked about doing that. We have, and we had a past guest on the podcast here, Mr. David Rodriguez. He actually pioneers and heads up a paranormal investigation group out of Miami called Prism Paranormal Investigation. It's very popular. He gave us pretty much an open invitation for us to come on there anytime that we wanted to go down to one of the local haunts down there in Miami. There's a couple of them. I know there's an old schoolhouse that's abandoned. That's a place they frequent a lot, and also a mansion that they frequent pretty often there too. So, anyways, we've talked about it. We do plan on doing something like that in the future. When it's going to be tough, it's just getting our schedules aligned and being able to do that. I travel a lot, but I do want to do something like that in the near future once my travel schedule has calmed down a bit, so which is coming up pretty soon. So, I think that's something that me and Jay will be doing. Thanks, Charles, for the email and the mailbag question.
Great idea.
Yeah, great idea. So that's it for the mailbag, Jay. It's pretty short and sweet. Nothing too drastic this week on the mailbag, and that's a wrap for that. So, do you want to get into the next segment?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, let's get into it.
Absolutely.
And, of course, it's Will You Tell Me? And, of course, if you guys haven't listened to the show at all, this is your first time listening to the podcast, Will You Tell Me is a brainstorm child of Jay that one day he conjured up in his mind, that crazy mind of his. And, and basically came up with this game where he would ask me a question. I try to give an answer, either whether it being a legit answer or actually being complete bullshit. So, basically that's it, and that's how we play. And so, Jay, let's start it off. Will you tell me?
All right. So this week, Will, I have a question about music. I know you're a big music fan. You like you're fairly proficient in the history of great guitar players, and there's one that's surrounded by mystery.
Okay.
Can you tell me who the musician Robert Johnson was?
Robert Johnson was a old blues musician that I believe lived in the late 1800s, and he was known for supposedly going to the crossroads and selling his soul to the devil to be able to play the guitar. And supposedly he did so, and he'd had actually quite good success. Being an African American of that time and age, he actually recorded a bunch of songs. To this day, you could find an album of his from that time. It sounds very old and poppy and scratchy, but that's how it was from back that time. But yeah, Robert Johnson was an old school guitar player, very proficient, and was popularly known and historically known for supposedly selling his soul to the devil.
That is correct.
Yeah. Knocked it out of the park this week.
Well, I felt so bad. After the whole walking womb thing.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I need to try to go a little easier this week.
Yeah, I had nothing for
so,
that. Yeah, I was.
I watched a really cool documentary on it, and I was like, oh, I wonder if we would know that his name was Robert Johnson and that he's a member of the 27 Club.
Yeah, see, I didn't know that. I didn't know he was a member. See, that's something I didn't know.
Yeah, he had stopped playing for years while his first wife was pregnant with his first child. She left where they lived to go to her grandmother's to bear the child. He decided that while he was going to travel and meet them there, he would hit a couple of his old guitar haunts along the way. And by the time he got to his wife's grandmother's, the wife and the baby had both died. And they said it was because he was playing the devil's music.
Oh, wow.
So he ended up throwing himself in full, went to the crossroads, sold his soul to the devil, allegedly.
Yeah.
It became one of the most innovative blues players ever. And while throwing himself fully into this whole guitar player for the devil, he was poisoned by a nightclub owner when he was 27.
That's so crazy. I mean, think about that's how the guy died. I mean, out of all the ways to die, that's how he dies. You know what I'm saying? So
yep.
It kind of gives, a little bit of credence to maybe that he really did sell his soul to the devil. You know what I mean? For him to lose it all like that, you know what I'm saying? It sounds so weird and macabre and just so obtuse for someone to lose it all just that way.
And it's one of the fastest rides to power. There was a documentary I was watching, like I said earlier, and they had said that a lot of the other blues players around there thought that he was okay. He disappeared for a year. Supposedly had gone to the crossroads and came back and was doing things that nobody had ever done before or have done since.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe so. That's it's an age-old tale. I mean, it goes back to Faust, and they talk about selling his soul to the devil. It's an age-old tale. It's been told over and over and over again. So it's interesting to see how it's permeated into music in that facet, and it is a very interesting story. So yeah, thanks Jay with that question for Will You Tell Me, and that was it. That's pretty much a wrap for that. And you ready for the rest of the podcast, Jay?
Yeah, man, let's do this. Let's jump in. Meat and potatoes.
Hi, this is Emily Mintz-House-Stakely with What the Frick Live podcast. You're listening to Dark Fringe Radio.
Tonight we're going to be talking about some of our favorite conspiracy theories that we have come up with and we've compiled together to, talk about, and we basically think that these ones are ones that have a lot more credence and possibility to them. So they're going to be some of the ones that you probably already know, but there are also going to be some that you probably don't know as well. So this week we're going to start off with JJ. What do you have this week for your first one for conspiracy theories for tonight?
Well, my first one is a really interesting one to think about. The what ifs, the facts, it's going back to a time when the world was scared of one person. My first one tonight good grief, is Hitler.
Hitler.
The fact that him and Eva Braun did not commit suicide in the bunker. In fact, they continued to go ahead and live in Argentina. I found it to be, I've always found it really interesting as to how much misinformation was given and how pretty much right then and there, that's when the Cold War was going to settle in, because Russia was feeding us lies about a body they recovered. Eventually there was DNA testing. It turned out it was a 40-year-old woman. Oh, but they just happened to burn the evidence that they had. They actually made it a law that anybody that was giving out information or asking questions about the death of Hitler would be in prison for 7 years.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, there are bodies found in their bunker, but the two that were supposed to be Hitler and Eva Braun were the only two that were burned beyond recognition, and the only way to figure out if it was Hitler back then would have been dental records.
Right.
And the dentist teams that Hitler had, they had to draw it from memory, and some of them matched and some of them didn't.
Interesting. That's very interesting. You know what? I mean, that's an age-old, tale. If we talk about again, it's the question is if Hitler died, and how were we able to prove that he did die and supposedly did commit suicide? And you're talking about all this flimsy, information and all this flimsy, evidence that they have that really doesn't, amount to much as far as evidence that he was found there, dead, of a suicide supposedly. Isn't that what they said, that he shot himself in the head, him and Eva Braun or whatever her name was?
Yep, supposedly he shot her and then shot himself, supposedly. But even that was information given to a British soldier who was supposed to investigate it. But that British soldier, he was proficient in the history of war. He had nothing to do with any kind of investigative purposes. He focused more on history.
Right.
He had nothing to do with it, so he did the best he could to play detective, but he got a lot of misinformation from eyewitnesses that never actually witnessed anything. More assumption.
Wow.
So everybody followed that narrative, and for many, many years, the CIA, actually up until the 70s, kept on an open investigation for Hitler.
You know what's interesting? A lot of people say that he went down to Argentina because that's where a lot of the Nazi, the fled went down to. They fled down to Argentina, and they said they even have supposedly photographs. I guess he tried to cut his hair or grow out his hair and his beard and so on and so forth. Trying to do something to change his appearance, but nonetheless, they said that they photographed him many years later, and it's an unbelievable story. I mean, just imagine that guy getting away and being able to live a full life after what he was responsible for doing during that time. It's just amazing.
It's a possibility. If anybody had the clout, the power, the money, the ability to do it, would have been Hitler.
No, that's true. He definitely had the means to do it. He definitely had the means to do it. I mean, he was super rich and super wealthy, and they were just collecting, just items from all over the place, just unbelievable, just relics that were, priceless. So yeah, the dude had money, and he, supposedly remember that gold room that they took, that they had in Russia and all that shit. And so yeah, nonetheless, they had money. So yeah, he had the means to do it. And a lot of people say that he did go down to Argentina. Some people say that he actually went to Canada too. Have you heard that one, Jay?
I have heard that one. I don't. The information on that one is even more flimsy than something of this magnitude could already be expected to be.
Right.
It's just if he got away, I think Argentina is the one that makes the most sense. Mm-hmm. There were all kinds of U-boats fleeing Germany, heading to Argentina, and there are a couple that were never found. There are eyewitnesses from hotel. There was a hotel that was owned by a Nazi benefactor, and one of her staff recalled Hitler taking over the whole third floor for the last few weeks before they disappeared.
Huh. Yeah, that doesn't sound very suspicious at all. I mean, please.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, and another one that they mentioned too, Jay, and I'm not sure if you've heard this, but another place of supposed where he fled to was the South Pole, like Antarctica, supposedly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because we talked about this the whole Hollow Earth.
Right, exactly. So he was supposedly, he went down there and hid down there. So man, there's so many possibilities. I mean, who knows? I mean, who knows where he could have ended up? I mean, but I'm sure, of course, he's dead by now. I mean, the guy should, by natural causes. I would highly doubt that he's still alive. But interesting story and an interesting conspiracy theory there, Jay. I mean, anything else to add to that?
No, that's it. It just was always one of my favorite ones to think how everybody it's so obviously focused on one narrative. But never really looked that deep into actually what happened. Always kind of entertained me.
Yeah, I totally get it, man, and I totally believe it too, man. I don't think that the narrative that was told to us is what has actually happened in that particular circumstance, but who knows? But yeah, that brings me to my first one for tonight, Jay. It's the Hellfire Club, and I'm not sure. Do you know anything at all about the Hellfire Club, Jay?
As far as the conspiracy goes, not a lot. I'm embarrassed to say.
Yeah.
The Hellfire Club I know is mostly from the X-Men, but
yeah.
I know it's derived from that.
Yeah, no, and it's a pretty interesting conspiracy theory. It's an exclusive club for usually high-ranking society people in Britain and Ireland in the 18th century. The name commonly used was to refer to Sir Francis Dashwood, the Order of the Friars of St. Francis of Wycombe. That was what the original name of the Hellfire Club was, but it just evolved into the Hellfire Club. Well, anyways,
the Hellfire Club rolls off the tongue a little bit easier.
A lot easier, total, right? So they had these clubs that they were rumored meeting places of persons of quality that basically wished to take part in socially perceived immoral acts. And the members are often involved in politics, people who are involved in government, all sorts of people. I mean, high-ranking officials, from every possible corner of society, high society. Yeah, so you had this, all these people just meeting up at these clubs that were basically a place for them to kind of unwind and not be judged and get together and talk about how ridiculous religion is. It was a very anti-religious place, even to the point where some people thought that they were devil worshippers or Satanists, even by the name the Hellfire Club, of course. But that actually wasn't true. They never worshipped Satan or the devil. They just call themselves devils because that's what they just call themselves. But they
anybody who wasn't strong religiously was considered a devil back in those days, and there were a number of countries. They looked at facts, they looked at figures, they looked at bottom lines, they looked at revenues, they looked at binary. It was all numbers for them. So in that world, there's not a whole lot of space for religion.
Yeah, no, there wasn't. And the Hellfire Club ran around 1749 to about 1764. And so that's where, it kind of ran the original one, the Order of the Friars of St. Francis of Wycombe. Then after that, that's when it kind of transverted and converted to the Hellfire Club, where they, got together, talked about all these things. They had prostitutes. They did worshiping of pagan, rituals and stuff like that. So, you had a lot of, crazy stuff that was happening there. A lot of funny things too regarding this particular conspiracy theory, because they say that Benjamin Franklin was actually part of the Hellfire Club as well, and he actually used to frequent the Hellfire Club pretty often. So I thought that was quite interesting.
It wouldn't surprise me at all.
No, I mean, because if you don't know, in history's told this before, that Benjamin Franklin was pretty much a ladies' man. He was a womanizer maybe at best. But he was good with the ladies, and he enjoyed the company of women. And so this basically fit the MO of Benjamin Franklin. I could totally see him being part of the Hellfire Club without a doubt. But it's interesting. It's still around today, to this day, Jay. You still have some colleges in Ireland that still practice. Yeah, they do the rituals. They do all the other stuff in these caves in Ireland and so on and so forth. And they kind of try to keep the the thing going, the rituals alive and things like that. And it's just it's one of those things. But it's not like what it used to be. Obviously, now it's been given to these college kids, and they're doing whatever they want with it, and making fun of it at the same time. But nonetheless, it was a real thing at one point, and it's pretty interesting to know that there was places like this for these rich and wealthy and highfalutin people to go to, have these things or experience these things that most people would shun about.
Yeah, well, I mean, that just goes to show you that for hundreds of years has been a large chasm between the wealthy and the elite, and the not so wealthy and not so elite, and that just goes to show that you go kick it at a bar, they go to the Hellfire Club.
That's right.
At a different level.
That's correct, man. So that's my first one for tonight, Jay, the Hellfire Club. What's your second one for tonight?
For me, it's the assassination of JFK.
Ooh.
There's so many theories out there, multiple shooters, one shooter, who backed it, was he acting alone,
Magic
Grassy
Bullet.
Knolls, Zapruder film. There's all kinds of different things to dive into.
The babushka lady, the magic bullet. There's so many different theories, Jay.
Oh, there's so many different theories. And it's interesting to think who could have really been in charge and what the motives were. And it's kind of strange that Oswald was killed by a nightclub owner that had mafia ties, and Mafia and the CIA had both talked about overthrowing the government in Cuba, which JFK was entrenched in negotiations with. And there's so many things, and some people get so passionate and angry about it, and there's just so many angles. It's one of those things that you can sit there for hours and just kind of run through all the scenarios. So how it happened and why it happened and what's coincidental and what's
let's talk about
signs. It's cool.
Let's talk about the top two, theories about that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's go this route. Let's go the mafia route.
Yep.
Do you think that happened that way?
Yes.
Okay. So, for those that don't know, Jay, fill everybody in on the supposed mafia tie story, please.
Well, I uncovered this when we were doing our true crimes, and I was looking into Jimmy Hoffa. And it turns out that Jack Ruby, who is the man who shot Oswald, owned a nightclub and was in cahoots with the same mafia that was talking with the CIA about overthrowing the Cuban government. They could control the influx of weapons coming into the United States. The mafia and the government are both at the same time looking into removing the Cuban government. To me, it's too coincidental that you have Oswald, who had military service, was the kind of guy that would take orders and do a job, was not satisfied with the current standing of the government and its involvement in the Vietnam War, and then he's killed by somebody with mafia ties. I don't know. Kind of quirky.
Yeah, it is kind of quirky. I mean, the Lee Harvey Oswald, theory is just, it doesn't, it's, okay, listen, first off, the shot that he made, or supposedly that he made, it was a doable shot, first off. Let's get that shit out the window, number one. Everybody thinks that it was such an impossible shot. No, it wasn't really at all. If you actually go there for yourself and you actually go to that actual building that's still there, that still faces that fucking street where he got shot, if you go there, you can see that it's not really a difficult shot if you were a good sniper. And if you were a military sniper, even easier, which he was. Everybody knows that he was military trained. So, Number one, could he have made that shot? Yes, he could have made that shot.
Absolutely.
Number two, did he shoot him? I don't know. I mean, maybe not. There's so many different, variations, man. You got the the smoke in the fucking trees over there in the bushes. You know, you got this lady who's walking around who doesn't look like she's not even panicking for some reason. You know, did the driver shoot him? That's another conspiracy theory. You know, that supposedly maybe he just, you know, reached back and shot him, you know, with a gun, you know, while he was driving. So there's another conspiracy theory. Who knows? Who knows? You know, at this point. And then Jack Ruby killing Lee Harvey Oswald after. What was all that about?
Yep.
You know, that was a big thing. And that, you know, raises a lot of questions more than it answers anything.
Well, yeah. I mean, why was Jack Harvey so... I mean, the whole nation was reeling as far as the population was concerned, but it seems awfully out of place. Like, there's a level there that's not matching up.
No, it's not.
You know what I mean?
No, not at all, man. Not at all. And so, well, yeah, that's a great one, man. It's a classic, and that's one that we all love to talk about. When you talk about people,
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, you convert people into becoming a conspiracy theorist. That's the first one you really kind of bring them into. I mean, because listen, that's something that we'll never know the truth. To this day,
Nope.
We're never going to know the truth. If we haven't figured out by now what the truth is with the technology that we have now, we're never going to know. So unless we come up with some type of time machine where we can actually go back and witness things that, you know, that have unfolded in the past, that's the only way. But until then, we'll never know. So, yeah, it's one that will always, you know, reign very high on the conspiracy theory list, Jay, and thanks for bringing it up as your second one for tonight. My second one for tonight, I actually kind of went down the obscure path tonight, Jay, is the death of Paul McCartney. Now, this is one that, you know, a lot of people have, you know, talked about throughout the years, and a lot of people believe. And if you're a Beatles fan, you know, if you're a true, you know, Beatles fan, I'm sure you would know or have heard of this actual conspiracy theory. And the conspiracy theory is that, you know, for over 50 years, some people actually think that Paul McCartney actually died in a car crash in 1966. And he was actually replaced with a lookalike imposter. And it was,
Right.
You know, that's something that, that's a crazy story if you really, really think about it. And, you know, crazy to think that they would actually do something like that. But then again, the stock on the Beatles at that point was so high, it would not surprise me that people would be, you know,
Willing to continue going along with the ruse?
Yeah, of course. Why not? I mean, if it's fucking paying off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, listen, McCartney himself, he referenced the Paul is Dead myth on the 1993 album Paul is Live. He also parodied the iconic album of Abbey Road, which, of course, conspiracy theories allege that it contained clues suggesting that McCartney's replacement was with a dead ringer. And then in the fall of 1969, rumors spread across the American college campuses that Paul had tragically died in a car crash 3 years earlier after angrily running out of a contentious recording session. So according to the rumors, Jay, the surviving Beatles, perhaps pressured by the British government, supposedly, this is all, of course, a conspiracy theory, decided to cover up the death and replace Paul with a lookalike musician named Billy Campbell. Now, why would the government pressure John, George, and Ringo to cover up the bandmate's death? Who knows? You know what I mean? If that's the, you know, the conspiracy theory, you know, why would they do that? Some say the Beatles' success was so high that, like you said, Jay, let's just keep this bitch going and let's replace him with somebody else that looks just like him, and let's go all the way through. And some others theorized that the government, you know, feared news of Paul's death would actually trigger suicides. That was actually another.
It might.
Yeah, you know, worldwide, among millions of preteens and teen fans, because they were so popular during that time, Jay. I mean, you see the videos. These women, these girls. I mean, not women because they're girls, but they see them, or they're out there, and they're just like literally screaming.
Convulse.
Yeah, they're convulsing, like, you know, it's unbelievable. Like they've seen something like of another, you know, world. But anyways, I mean, so that was another, you know, theory that they didn't want to cause some type of, you know, crazy panic among preteens and teens and have a fucking mass suicide on their hands. Supposedly they said that they they conceded with, replacing McCartney with this look-alike, because of that. And, that's what they've done from this point on.
It's amazing to think that then this guy sold his life to become Paul McCartney. And he's so essentially this stand-in, this double. He actually died in the car accident instead of Paul McCartney.
Right. How about that? That's another one. That's interesting too.
Wrap your mind around that.
Yeah, that's a mind fuck in itself. So in 1966, he supposedly died in a car crash. They don't do another live concert until 1969, which is quite odd, no? Especially at that height of the success that they were having at that point.
Yeah.
Some say because they could have got burnt out. They were recording, blah, 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 blah. But again, the money is in touring and, concerts and stuff like that, especially back then.
Yep.
Yep. So from 1966 to 1969, they finally play a live concert 3 years later. Soon thereafter, the radio station's newspaper, they picked up on the rumors and discussed them constantly. And so, you go to a college party back then in 1969, people were talking about it. It was just one of those things that was a constant, thing of discussion. There was even a number of songs that were released about the rumors. For instance, there was one called Brother Paul by Billy Shears and the All-Americans. And basically, it was an ode to Paul McCartney, and some of the lyrics were like, "Brother Paul, I'm crying. Are you really lying? Every night and day beneath the cold and lonely stone," stuff like that. That's
crazy.
Yeah, you get these other people that in the music business that are actually, acknowledging that this may have happened. So how did Paul, respond to all this controversy? So what did he do? He didn't do anything, Jay. I guess, back then, of course, there was no social media, of course. There wasn't a way that you could just tweet your response, within minutes of seeing something, So, you actually had to either send a telegram or, talk to an actual magazine reporter or, newspaper reporter or something like that to have your story told.
Yep.
This was, something that, why did he not say anything? Why, so if there are all these rumors out there and it was fucking heavy, the rumors, he didn't say a damn thing. So they chalked up his silence to as an admission of guilt, and that's what they basically said. They said, okay, if this guy's not saying anything, so they basically are saying, yeah, okay, they're fessing up to it. So basically, fans started thinking that John, George, and Ringo, because they were racked full of guilt for what happened, they left clues about the tragedy for their fans to find out. How do they do that? For example, on the song "Strawberry Fields Forever," which would have been recorded shortly, actually, Jay, right after Paul's supposed death. John twice says, "I buried Paul," quote, "I buried Paul," in the fade, starting at about 3 minutes and 57 seconds in the song. And of course, after that, everyone involved in the recording claims that John was actually saying cranberry sauce. Yeah. So that's one theory, right?
Right.
Next thing, on the back of the Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band, Paul is facing away from the camera while the other three are looking into it. Also, Paul's Pepper uniform has a badge with the acronym OPD on it. Now, that was believed to stand for Officially Pronounced Dead. Now, that was later revealed that the badge was from the Ontario Police Department. But the conspiracy theories were skeptical, of course. And then when John's lyric in The Day of the Life about Lucky Man, quote unquote, who blew his mind out of a car, which was, a lyric that was, famous off the White Album. I think that was done before that. And another thing that they found out was a clue that they saw on the Abbey Road album cover, which there was a VW bug, and on the license plate it said 28IF, and as in Paul would have been 28 if he were still alive. In fact, he would have been like around 27 actually, but it was actually weird that was on the actual license plate of the VW bug.
That's weird.
Yeah. Also, in the Abbey Road album cover, Paul alone isn't wearing shoes, and that's said to basically symbolize that he's a corpse, because basically when they put you in the casket, they don't put shoes on you. But he's also alone holding a cigarette, which also is taken as a sign as well. So yeah, you have all these things, Jay, all these little tidbits that are out there that that have been thrown out that this may have happened back in 1966. But it's still interesting. What do you think, Jay?
Well, it's very interesting, and I believe that somebody who was looking at a fairly average life looked at this opportunity and jumped at the chance. And I also don't think it's the first time or the last time it's happened.
No, I don't think so either. I totally believe it. So, nonetheless, but that's my second one for tonight. Jay, what's your final one for tonight for conspiracy theories?
My final one for tonight is actually one that I found out just recently. It's a little less popular or spoken about these days, and that was the fact that there was a plot to overthrow FDR. Like, that's crazy. You think about the fact that this president got us through a world war, got us out of the Great Depression. He served 2 more terms than any other president ever, being a president for 16 years, essentially. He was such a pillar of what America was. The fact that there was talks about taking a veteran army, having a very charismatic general lead it, and use them to input their own fascist dictator, much like Mussolini.
Yes.
Like, that's crazy.
No, it totally is crazy, man. I mean, that's I don't even know what to say to that.
They're financiers, big bank people, Wall Street investors, kings of industry, if you will. Like the fact that Mussolini was backed by these big business interests and always dealt them a very kind hand, allowed a lot of people to make money in the most unscrupulous ways under his regime, and they wanted to kind of do the same thing here. They found a great Marine, a great general who was, he's a 3-star general. He was disenfranchised by the Marines because he ended up running a podunk little setup in Paris in the swamp during the First World War when he'd always wanted to be part of the action, but he did so well that got him promoted through the ranks very fast. And then when he fell out with it and never got his chance to make any major decisions or any major battles, that's when he was approached. And him being a good American, followed up, had a lot of questions until he could get through the plot, and then he actually turned everybody in a congressional hearing.
That's how the plot turns right there, right?
Right there. Yep.
Jeez, man. Wow. Yeah, that's a good one.
So I thought that was very interesting. It was something that was talked about as a conspiracy. Obviously, there's a lot of facts pointing that it's probably more real than conspiracy, but it's an old one. It's an old conspiracy, but it really shows how cutthroat man can be.
Oh yeah.
At trying to achieve something.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's what they say, right? So, it's crazy, man, to know that the history repeats itself. It really does, in a lot of different ways. I mean, we still see that to this day. With some of these corrupt people that are CEOs of companies or government, and they get outed, and they find out that they are so corrupt that they have money, invested in this and that, and governments, across the world, and selling secrets and this and that, and just, it gets crazy. It gets so crazy to know that it's still, to this day, it repeats itself. And it seems to me, Jay, that it'll never go away, right? It's one of those things.
Nope.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Nope. I was having that conversation just today. Somebody asked me how I would fix the government, and I said, I honestly don't know, because I don't necessarily think it's the setup of the government that's the issue. Part of the issue is the people in charge.
Yeah.
And you'd have to hope that if somebody else were to be in charge, that they would have more humanity, more empathy, more understanding, and not just want more of what they now have in addition for.
Yeah, well, next time somebody asks me that question, I'll tell you, first answer is going to be for me is get rid of the fucking lobbyists. That's the first thing that you do to get, start fixing some things around here. So you get rid of the lobbyists, and that's when you, start fixing things. So that way you don't have companies actually paying people to, persuade, powerful
Yep.
and in politics to do your will. Because they will give you and align your pockets with campaign money. So, but that's a whole other thing. We won't really get into politics. We don't like to do that here at Dark Fringe Radio. So, but that's a great one, Jay, and thanks for bringing that up. And last one I want to bring up, Jay, is weather modification. Now, this is something that people still to this day, we talk about. We see the some of these things in the sky that look like cloud seeding and spraying in the atmosphere, and it's pretty intense to see a lot of this stuff happening, and a lot of it can be explained, a lot of it can't be explained. I mean, yes, you do have some that have the jet, what do they call that?
The C-130s.
No, it's the jet engine. There's what happens is that because it's going through the atmosphere so fast and so hot that actually it's actually condensation. Excuse me, that's what I'm thinking of. Condensation. So condensation builds up on the engine and it actually forms these clouds. So you have some of that, yes, but then you also have some of these other things that you have some low-lying planes, Jay, that are leaving these trails that you have to wonder, why what's happening here, and what is weather modification, and just to let everybody know, it's the act of intentionally manipulating or altering the weather to one's will. And the most common form of weather modification is cloud seeding, which increases the rain or snow, usually for the purpose of increasing local water supply. That's usually what it's known for and what it's developed to be. Weather modification can actually have a goal of preventing damaging weather, such as hail or hurricanes, from occurring, or provoking damaging weather against the enemy, as an tactic of the military or economic warfare, like Operation Popeye, which, Jay, I'm not sure if you know or not, where clouds were seeded in Vietnam to prolong a monsoon, to basically debilitate their army. And so we basically cloud seeded their clouds there. We prolonged the monsoon to go an extra month, an extra 30 days. And, after that, it was banned by the United Nations under the Environmental Modification Convention. So that was the last time cloud seeding was used, supposedly, in military warfare.
Well, in combat.
Yeah, in combat. But it didn't really. I'm sure there's some type of Geneva convention type stuff that prevents it from happening. As far as the weather, but I'm sure there's ways to get around that. But the common technique for cloud seeding, is to enhance precipitation, of course. So they would use entrails, spraying small particles into the atmosphere, such as silver iodide, into clouds and to affect their development. So basically to trigger these clouds that are just sitting up there to actually start, producing condensation and supposedly then finally rain. So, it's you have cloud seeding, Jay. That's been happening around, for a long time, and there's also been other types of methods of trying to manipulate weather. For instance, they were trying to figure out a way to de-intensify hurricanes. You and I, both us living here in Florida all our lives, we know all about hurricanes and how devastating they can be and how powerful they can be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And, we know what usually, fuels them. It's that warm water. Once they're over a warm body of water, we've heard it time in and out, again and again, that once that body of that actual storm is over a warm body of water, it actually intensifies. So us knowing that, they've used that knowledge, and they have tried to, with this project called Project Storm Fury, they attempted to weaken tropical cyclones and hurricanes by flying an aircraft into the storm and seeding the eye wall with the silver iodide. And so what it's actually doing, it's actually bringing down the temperature of the actual core of the hurricane or cyclone to actually de-intensify it. So it's bringing the temperature down, so that way it doesn't intensify. It gets weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. So, there you go. Just right there. There's one example of how we've used the weather modification in a good way. Imagine how you could use it in a bad way. There's so many endless possibilities.
Making the monsoon go an extra month. That's got to mess up an entire ecosystem or weather system's worth of setup. Just imagine how much additional shit you're putting in the atmosphere.
Yeah, you're right. And that was back in the 60s, Jay. They were doing that back in the 60s. We are in 2018, 19 now. Wow. Think about what they could do now. You've heard of HARP. They have that facility where they can shoot those fucking those beams into the Aurealis Borealis, that atmospheric thing where they bounce it off of that, and they can actually make things happen. And it's just crazy. It's crazy to think that we are actually even manipulating the weather now, Jay, to use it against other people that we don't get along with in warfare now. So that's I think that's what's actually going to be the wave of the future. It's not going to be androids fighting each other, things like that. It's going to be who can fuck with the other person's weather first to really debilitate them. That's what it's going to be. Who can fuck with the other's environment? Ecosystem.
We'll make it so the Earth can't heal once we're dead.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Exactly. Right, and fight for all that for what? To have a fucking bombed out Earth after? What good is that? You know what I'm saying? So it's crazy to know that we have that type of technology even now to be able to do something like that, to go into a tropical cyclone, drop stuff in there to try to slow it down. We've even tried using lasers to discharge lightning in storms, which are likely to become hurricanes. That's another thing that we've done now, Jay, with the weather modification. We've actually poured liquid nitrogen into the sea to deprive the hurricane of heat energy. So, again, we're figuring out every possible way to not let that hurricane intensify any which way possible. We even created a soot to absorb sunlight and change the air temperature and create convection currents in the outer wall. So we actually we invented this soot that absorbs sunlight and actually changes the air temperature. So that's crazy. We've done this already, Jay. This is the stuff of the future. So what weather modification? That's going to be the wave of the future, Jay. This is where, when we get old, this is what they're going to be fighting about.
I hope I survive that long.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's it for us tonight, man. And the weather modification is the nail in the coffin for tonight's conspiracy theories. So hope you guys enjoyed it. We've done a lot of research on these different conspiracy theories, so we hope you guys enjoyed all that stuff that we shared with you tonight. We're going to get into the outro. Before we get into the outro, Jay, of course, every week we have to do What to Watch. And Jay, what do you have for us this week for What to Watch?
It's a documentary. Not really a documentary. It's more of a movie that tells the life of a boxer named Chuck Webner. Not a lot of people know that Chuck Webner was the inspiration for Rocky, including he had an exhibition where he fought Andre the Giant. And not too far removed from Stallone fighting Hulk Hogan or Thunderlips in Rocky 3.
Yes, sir.
He got to fight Ali. He got this out of nowhere chance. He was a bum, and he went the distance with Muhammad Ali, losing by decision.
Yes, sir.
Beyond that, he had a couple other fights. He would win. He was staying up higher in the ranks. He ends up flushing his life down the drain, getting into a lot of trouble with cops. It's an interesting premise of a movie. It's called The Brawler. It's all about Chuck Webner. It's on Netflix. Everybody should check it out. It was fantastically entertaining.
What do they call him? They called him the Bayonne Bleeder or something like that. Isn't that what they called him?
Yes. It was the Bayonne Bleeder.
Yeah, something like that. Some crazy name. But yeah, no, a lot of people don't know about Chuck Webner. And he was the inspiration for Rocky. And what a great story. And he went the distance with Ali. But Ali was at the very, very twilight of his career at that point. We were talking about.
No.
You don't think so?
He was. No, they fought in the 60s, man.
Oh, it was in the 60s. Okay, I thought it was in the 80s.
So Ali, I think this wasn't too long after Ali had just gotten back into boxing from his long layoff. But Chuck Webner being able to go toe-to-toe with Ali and survive proved that he could take a lot of punishment.
Yeah,
so
a legend.
It propelled him to all new heights.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a legend. He's a legend. I mean, to be able to do that and talk about it and have that etched in your history. I mean, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So,
yeah.
All right, well, yeah, I'll have to check that out, man. Yeah, I don't have anything for what to watch this week, so it's all you. So yeah, check that out on Netflix. It's called. What'd you call it again? What was the name of it, Jay?
The Brawler.
The Brawler. So yeah, check that out on Netflix. That's Jay's what to watch for this week, and of course. That leaves us to the outro, Jay. Just wanted to remind everybody, check us out, Dark Fringe Radio on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter, at Dark Fringe Radio. Make sure you like, follow, and share all our stuff. Jay, anything for the outro for tonight?
No, that's it. Everybody, please keep those emails pouring in. Let us know your scary stories. I know that's been something that's been posted. Always give us as much content as you want us to put out. We'll put out as much as we can. Please keep rating and reviewing, giving us as much help as you can to boost us higher so we can spread the love to more people.
Absolutely. And Jay, again, thank you for coming on the podcast. And I am, again, Will Martinez for Jay Galosi for Dark Fringe Radio. Thanks for coming on the podcast and listening, and we hope you guys enjoy, and we'll catch you again next week.
What do these things want, and why are they here?
You still don't get it, do you, boy?
They have recruited the rich and the powerful.
They're running the whole show.
Wake up! They're all about you, all around you. Blinded us to the truth.
Take a look.
They are safe as long as they are not discovered.
I don't know what they are or where they came from, but we gotta stop them.
Stay away from me.
Put these on. They have us. Look at them, they're everywhere. owners.
We have no other choice.
I don't like this one bit.
Leave it alone, man. It ain't none of my business. Ain't none of yours.
We have been lulled into a trance.
Listen to what I'm saying to you. We're in trouble. The whole world's in trouble. Control us! You're sending some kind of signals out of TV sets.
I've got one that can see.
Mama don't like tattletale.
Now we start spilling some blood.
Let's go!
Push a button.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick. And I'm all out of bubblegum.